quick thing before we start. If you're enjoying this podcast, tell one friend about it. Just one. Send them a link right now. Seriously, pause us and send them a link. We'll wait.
We're not actually waiting.
We're not waiting, but you should still do it. Word of mouth is literally everything. Okay? Let's go. So picture this. France, 1600s. You're a prisoner and King Louis XIV has personally ordered that you must wear a mask covering your entire face every single day for the rest of your life. If you try to remove it, the guards will kill you on the spot. If anyone sees your face, they'll kill you. And you wear this mask for 34 years. 34 years. And when you finally die, you're buried under a fake name and 300 years later, nobody knows who you were.
That's the most disturbing thing I've ever heard.
Right? This actually happened. Real prisoner, real French prisons, real mask, everything documented. We just don't know who he was.
Wait, hold on. How do you wear a mask for 34 years? Like, how does that even work?
Carefully and miserably. We'll get to that. But first, let me just say, this is one of the greatest mysteries in French history, and we're going to spend 40 minutes trying to solve it, even though, spoiler alert, we're not going to solve it.
Why do you keep doing episodes where we don't solve anything?
Because unsolved mysteries are interesting, Mark. And this one is particularly interesting because it's about absolute power. Like, imagine being so powerful you can just erase someone. Not kill them, erase them, make them disappear while keeping them alive. That's what Louis XIV did.
The Sun King.
The Sun King ruled France for 72 years, longest reign in European history, built Versailles, fought like 12 wars, made France the dominant power in Europe. And somewhere in the middle of all that grandeur had a guy locked up in a mask for 3 decades.
Okay, but why though?
That's the question. Why? What could someone know or what could someone be that would require that level of secrecy for that long? And here's the thing that makes it darker. Louis didn't just kill this person. He kept them alive for 34 years behind a mask. That's not punishment. That's erasure.
That's actually more disturbing than execution.
It is more disturbing because it means the person's existence was the problem, not what they did, who they were, or what they represented, their face, their identity. That was the threat. So Louis just deleted it. Okay, let's start with what we actually know because there's a lot we don't know, but there are some facts.
Please, facts. I need facts.
In 1669, a prisoner arrives at a fortress called Pignay Roll. That's in the Alps, French territory at the time. Now, it's in Italy, but back then, French. The prisoner is placed under custody of a guy named Benigny d'Auvergne de Saint-Mars.
That is the most French name I've ever heard.
So, French. Saint-Mars is essentially the king's personal jailer. If you need someone in prison forever and you don't want questions, you call Saint-Mars. He handles the sensitive cases, the state secrets, the people who need to disappear, and this prisoner, ultra classified.
How classified?
Saint-Mars gets explicit orders from Louis himself. This prisoner must never be identified. Complete isolation. Double doors on his cell so nobody can hear him speak. No visitors, no contact with other prisoners. And most importantly, must wear a mask whenever anyone might see him.
So they literally put a mask on his face?
They literally put a mask on his face and locked it there. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The popular story says it was an iron mask, like full metal. That's where the name comes from. The man in the iron mask.
But it wasn't iron.
Probably not iron. Historians think it was most likely black velvet with steel or leather reinforcement, maybe hinges so he could eat through it. Still a mask, still locked, still covered his entire face, but probably not solid iron because that would actually kill you. You'd overheat, suffocate. Iron doesn't breathe.
So where does the iron mask thing come from?
Alexandre Dumas, 1848, wrote a novel called The Man in the Iron Mask as a sequel to The Three Musketeers. Gave the prisoner an iron mask because it's more dramatic, more visual, better for the cover art, and the name stuck. But the real prisoner probably wore black velvet, which is still terrifying, just less metal.
Okay, so velvet mask, whatever. Who was he?
Nobody knows. And that's the whole mystery. People have been theorizing about this for 300 years. Every historian has a pet theory. Every novelist has added their own twist. The Man in the Iron Mask has become this historical Rorschach test where you can project whatever conspiracy you want onto him.
What's your theory?
I don't have a theory yet. I have evidence. Let me lay out the evidence, then we'll talk theories.
Fine. Evidence.
So the prisoner arrives at Pignerol in 1669. We know this from prison records that survived. Saint-Mars refers to him in letters as my prisoner or the ancient prisoner, or sometimes just he, never uses a name. Never gives identifying details. It's all deliberately vague, like he's following a script.
That's super suspicious.
Super suspicious. And St. Mars treats this guy like he's radioactive. Double door cell so nobody can overhear. St. Mars serves meals personally so guards don't see the prisoner's face. When the prisoner needs to be moved to a different prison, which happens several times, St. Mars makes him wear the mask and travel in a covered sedan chair so nobody can glimpse him even for a second.
This is paranoid level security.
This is beyond paranoid. This is the fate of France, depends on nobody knowing who this guy is, level security. And it continues for decades. The prisoner moves with St. Mars from Pignerol to other fortresses, eventually ends up in the Bastille in Paris. And on November 19th, 1703, the prisoner dies, still masked, still anonymous, still whoever the hell he was.
How old was he when he died?
Prison records say approximately 45, but historians think that's probably fake too. Everything about this guy is obscured.
So we have a masked prisoner who shows up in 1669, dies in 1703, and we have zero idea who he is.
Correct. And when he dies, he's buried the next day under a fake name, Marchioli. The burial record says age about 45, died in the Bastille. That's it. No other details.
Marchioli sounds fake.
Marchioli is almost certainly fake. There's no record of anyone named Marchioli ever being imprisoned. It's just another layer of cover, another way to hide the truth.
But someone had to know. Louis knew. St. Mars knew.
They knew, but they never told anyone. Louis died in 1715, took it to his grave. St. Mars died in 1708, also took it to his grave. By the time people started seriously investigating, all the witnesses were dead. The secret died with them.
That's awfully convenient.
That's intentional. Louis wanted this secret buried forever, and he almost succeeded except for one problem. The mystery itself became famous. By hiding the prisoner's identity so carefully, Louis made everyone obsessed with figuring it out.
The Streisand effect.
The original Streisand effect. If Louis had just quietly executed this guy, nobody would remember him. But the mask made him legendary. 300 years later, we're still talking about him.
So, who could he have been? Give me the theories.
Oh, there are so many theories. Let's start with the most dramatic. Theory number 1. He was Louis XIV's secret twin brother.
His twin brother? Like a secret twin brother?
Secret identical twin. The theory goes like this. Queen Anne of Austria gives birth in September 1638. Twins, 2 baby boys, but having 2 identical heirs creates a massive succession problem. Who becomes king? They're the same age, identical, both have equal claim, so they hide the second twin, raise him in secret, but eventually he finds out the truth or he becomes a threat. So Louis has him imprisoned and masked for life to prevent a civil war.
That's literally a movie plot.
That's literally the plot of Dumas's novel. And it's romantic, it's tragic. Twin brothers separated by fate. One becomes the Sun King, the other lives in a mask. Great story. Almost certainly not true.
Why not?
Because royal births were public events. Dozens of witnesses, doctors, nobles, ladies in waiting, church officials, ambassadors. You can't hide a twin birth when half the court is watching you deliver. And we have the records. September 5th, 1638, 1 baby. Queen Anne had a difficult labour. People were worried she might die. A twin would have been noted by everyone present.
So, definitely not a twin.
Almost certainly not a twin, but people love this theory because it's dramatic. Secret brothers, hidden identity, the good twin and the bad twin. It's got everything except evidence.
What about an older, illegitimate brother? Not a twin, but like a secret firstborn.
That's theory number 2. Louis XIV had an older, illegitimate half-brother, maybe from an affair Anne had before marrying Louis XIII, maybe from early in the marriage. This brother grows up in secret. Then he shows up at court claiming to be the real firstborn, claiming he should be king. Louis freaks out and locks him up.
Is there any evidence for that?
Zero evidence. Anne was watched constantly. She was a Spanish princess. Her every move was monitored by courtiers and spies. An illegitimate pregnancy would have been impossible to hide. Plus, Anne and Louis XIII were married for like 23 years before Louis XIV was born. If she'd had a secret child earlier, someone would have known.
So probably not a brother at all.
Probably not a brother. But here's where it gets interesting. Some historians think the prisoner might have been connected to royalty somehow. Not a brother, but someone whose existence was embarrassing or dangerous to the crown.
Like who?
Like a minister who knew state secrets, or a nobleman involved in treason, or someone connected to a scandal Louis wanted buried. Theory number 3, he was Eustache d'Alga.
Who is that?
Great question because nobody really knows. Eustache Dauga is a name that shows up in St. Mars's prison records. Some historians think Dauga was a valet, servant. Specifically, he worked for Nicolas Fouquet, who was Louis's finance minister.
And who was Fouquet?
Fouquet was incredibly wealthy, incredibly powerful. He built a chateau called Vaux-le-Vicomte that was more beautiful than anything Louis owned at the time, which was a huge mistake because you never outshine the king.
What happened to him?
Louis arrested him in 1661 for embezzlement and corruption, which was probably at least partly true, but also Louis was jealous. Fouquet had a trial, was found guilty, sentenced to exile, but Louis personally changed it to life imprisonment. And guess where Fouquet ended up?
Pignerol.
Pignerol, under St. Mars, same fortress as the masked prisoner, and Fouquet had this valet named Eustache Dauga. Some historians think Dauga knew things, financial secrets, where money was hidden, maybe details about Louis's own financial corruption. So Louis imprisoned Dauga too.
And masked him. Why? He's just a servant.
That's the question. If Dauga was just a valet, why all the secrecy? Why the elaborate security? Why the mask? You don't do that for a servant unless he knows something catastrophic, or unless
he's not actually a servant.
Unless Eustache Dauga was a cover name, unless the prisoner was actually someone important pretending to be a valet, a nobleman in disguise, someone so connected to the royal family that even admitting he existed would cause a scandal.
So, who?
Well, the leading candidate for that is Ercole Mattioli.
That's a very Italian name.
He was Italian, minister for the Duke of Mantua, and in 1679 he spectacularly betrayed Louis XIV. Louis was trying to buy a fortress called Casale in northern Italy. Strategic location, good for defending against Spain. Mattioli was negotiating the deal. Louis gave him money, plans, military secrets, and Mattioli took all of it and sold it to Spain and Austria.
Oh, that's bad.
That's really bad. The deal falls apart. Spain and Austria know all of France's plans. Louis is humiliated in front of all of Europe. He is furious. So in May 1681, Louis has Mattioli kidnapped, seized on French soil, brought to Pignerol, and Mattioli disappears from history.
So you think Mattioli is the man in the Iron Mask?
A lot of historians think so. The timing works. Mattioli vanishes in 1681. That's close to when records mention the masked prisoner. Louis had motive. Mattioli humiliated him publicly. And the mask makes sense because Mattioli was a known figure in European politics. If anyone recognised him in prison, it would cause a diplomatic nightmare.
Okay, so case solved. It's Mattioli. Let's go home.
Not so fast. Other historians push back hard on this. They say the timeline doesn't line up perfectly, that Mattioli might have died earlier than the masked prisoner. That physical descriptions don't match. And some argue that an Italian minister, no matter how annoying, doesn't warrant 34 years in a mask.
So we're back to not knowing.
We're back to not knowing. And here's what makes this so frustrating. Even if we knew for certain it was Mattioli or Dauga or someone else that doesn't answer the real question.
Which is?
Why? Why did Louis go to these insane lengths? Why the mask? Why keep someone alive but hidden for 34 years? Why not just execute them quietly? What was so dangerous about this person's identity that it required this level of secrecy?
You think he was royal? You think he had to be connected to Louis somehow?
I think he had to be. Nothing else makes sense. A servant, a minister, even a treasonous Italian duke, you execute them. Public execution. Make an example. But you don't mask someone for 34 years unless their identity itself is the threat. Unless their face raises questions Louis couldn't afford to answer.
Like questions about legitimacy?
Like questions about legitimacy, about succession, about who should really be king. Those are the things that terrify monarchs. Not rebellion, not treason, legitimacy. Because if your claim to the throne is questioned, everything falls apart.
So maybe he was a relative. Or maybe he looked too much like Louis. Or maybe he knew secrets that would undermine Louis's right to rule.
Any of those would explain the mask. Because you can't kill him. If you kill him, he becomes a martyr. People ask questions. Rumours spread. But if he just disappears behind a mask, nobody knows what happened. The secret dies with him.
That's actually brilliant in a completely evil way.
It's terrifying genius. Louis understood that sometimes erasing someone is more effective than killing them. And that's what the mask was. Not punishment, erasure. Okay, so we've talked about who the prisoner might be. Now let's talk about what it was actually like to be that prisoner. because this is where it gets really dark.
I'm already depressed.
You should be. So first, the mask itself. We have some eyewitness accounts, not many, because the whole point was secrecy, but a few people saw the prisoner over the years and wrote about it later.
What do they say?
They describe it differently, which is frustrating, but also revealing. Some say it was iron or steel. Some say black velvet. One account says it covered his whole head like a helmet. Another says just the face. One source says it was hinged with a clasp at the chin so he could eat and drink without removing it.
Wait, he ate through the mask?
He ate through the mask. Think about that. 34 years of eating and drinking with a piece of velvet or metal strapped to your face. Food going into a small opening. Never able to properly taste anything. Never able to wipe your mouth. Never able to feel food on your lips.
That's torture.
That's absolutely torture. And here's what makes it worse. The mask wasn't just about hiding his face. It was about dehumanizing him, making him not a person, making him just a thing, a secret, a problem that needed to be contained.
Could he take it off when he was alone?
No, that's in St. Mars's orders. The mask stays on at all times. When guards deliver food, it stays on. When he sleeps, it stays on. When he washes, it stays on. The only person who might have seen his face was St. Mars himself, and St. Mars never told anyone what he saw.
What if he tried to take it off?
The guards were ordered to kill him immediately. That's explicit in the orders. If the prisoner attempts to remove the mask or if he attempts to communicate his identity to anyone, he is to be eliminated on the spot. No questions, no second chances, instant death.
So the secret was more important than his life.
The secret was infinitely more important than his life. And that tells us everything about what Louis valued. This wasn't about justice. This wasn't about punishment. This was about protecting Louis's power, his legitimacy, his carefully constructed image, and one prisoner's suffering was a small price to pay for that.
What was his daily life like?
Grim. He was kept in complete isolation. His cell had double doors, first door locked, then a corridor or antechamber, then second door locked, so nobody could overhear him if he spoke or shouted.
Could he speak?
He could speak, but only to St. Mars. And St. Mars wouldn't answer questions about who he was or why he was there. They could have practical conversations. I need a new blanket. The food is cold. Things like that. But nothing personal, nothing about identity.
Did he have books?
Some accounts say yes, he had books. He could read. He could write, although St. Mars would read everything he wrote and destroy anything that hinted at his identity. He could walk around his cell, but no exercise yard, no fresh air, no sunlight, no contact with other prisoners, no visitors, ever. 34 years of that.
How did he not go insane?
Maybe he did. We don't know. There are no accounts of his mental state, no diaries, no letters that survived, just silence. 34 years of silence.
Wait, okay, hold on. I need to push back on something. You keep saying this is torture, and it is, but wasn't he also treated relatively well? Like good food and clean clothes?
That's true. St. Mars's orders were to keep him alive and comfortable. Good food, clean clothes, decent furniture, not physically abused. And some people use that to argue it wasn't that bad.
But it was bad.
It was horrific. Physical comfort doesn't make up for psychological torture. And make no mistake, wearing a mask for 34 years, not being able to show your face, not being able to be recognized as human, that is torture. The good food just meant he was healthy enough to suffer longer.
That's dark.
That's Louis XIV. He wasn't interested in making the prisoner suffer physically. He was interested in erasing him. And you do that by taking away identity. The mask, the isolation, the fake name, all of it designed to make this person not exist while technically still being alive.
And it worked. Because we have no idea who he was.
It worked. Until the prisoner died in November 3. And then something interesting happened. People started asking questions. So the prisoner dies, November 3, still wearing the mask. He's buried the next day in a cemetery attached to the parish church of St. Paul in Paris. The burial record lists him as Marchioli, age approximately 45, died of natural causes in the Bastille.
And that's the end of the story.
That should be the end of the story, but it's not, because within a few years, rumours start spreading. Who was the masked man? Why was he masked? What did he know? And because nobody will give straight answers, people start making things up.
What kind of things?
Wild things. By the 1720s, there are stories about a mysterious masked prisoner. By the 1730s, Voltaire is investigating it.
Wait, Voltaire, the philosopher?
Voltaire, the philosopher. He became obsessed with this story. He interviewed people who had been imprisoned in the Bastille. He talked to prison guards. He collected rumours. And in the 1750s, more than 50 years after the prisoner died, Voltaire published his theories.
What did Voltaire think?
Voltaire thought the prisoner was royal. He wrote that the prisoner was so handsome that if people saw him, they would immediately recognise he was related to Louis. He thought maybe a brother, maybe an illegitimate son of the previous king. Voltaire was convinced this was someone whose existence threatened the entire Bourbon dynasty.
Was Voltaire right?
We don't know. Voltaire didn't have hard evidence. He had logic and rumours, but his logic was sound. Why else would Louis go to such lengths? Why else the mask? Why else 34 years of secrecy? Voltaire thought the only explanation was royal blood.
And then Dumas turned it into a novel.
And then in 1848, Alexandre Dumas wrote The Man in the Iron Mask, and everything changed.
What's the plot?
So Dumas makes it a sequel to The Three Musketeers. Louis XIV has an identical twin brother named Philippe. Philippe is noble, brave, generous. Louis is vain, cruel, paranoid. The Musketeers discover Philippe exists. They rescue him from prison. They try to switch the brothers, put the good twin on the throne, replace the bad king with the good one. It doesn't work. Philippe ends up back in prison, back in the mask, dies there. It's tragic and romantic and completely made up.
But everyone believed it.
Everyone believed it. The novel was a massive success, and suddenly the twin brother theory became what people knew about the Man in the Iron Mask, even though Dumas invented most of it.
So Dumas basically poisoned the historical record.
Dumas gave us a great story that most people now think is history, which is frustrating for historians but excellent for literature. The novel is genuinely good. If you like The Three Musketeers, you'll like the sequel. It's just not historically accurate.
And now we can't separate fact from fiction.
Now we can't separate fact from fiction, which is the story of how history gets remembered, right? Popular culture becomes the version people know. The real story gets buried under movies and novels and TV shows. And 300 years later, here we are still trying to figure out what actually happened.
So what do modern historians say? Like serious academic historians who've studied this?
Modern historians have gone through all the archives, prison records, letters, financial documents. They've built timelines. They've tried to match prisoners to dates, to descriptions, and they've basically narrowed it down to two serious candidates.
Dauger and Mattioli.
Dauger and Mattioli. Those are the two names that keep appearing in contemporary records. Those are the two prisoners at the right place at the right time with the right level of secrecy around them. Most serious historians think it's one of those two.
So which one?
Historians are split. Team Dauger says he's mentioned specifically in St. Mars's letters and the timeline is perfect. Team Mattioli says the diplomatic betrayal explains the level of secrecy and Louis had clear motive. Both sides have good arguments.
Can't we just check DNA or something?
We don't have DNA. The prisoner was buried in a cemetery in Paris. That cemetery doesn't exist anymore. During the French Revolution, about 90 years after his death, the cemetery was destroyed. The graves were dug up, remains scattered. So no body, no DNA, no way to test.
Of course.
Of course. This mystery is determined not to be solved.
Okay, so here's what I want to know, and I'm serious about this. Do you think he deserved it?
What do you mean?
I mean, whatever he did, whatever he knew. Do you think he deserved 34 years in a mask? Like, was the crime bad enough to justify the punishment?
That's a great question, and I think the answer is no. I don't think anyone deserves that.
Even if he was a traitor, even if he betrayed France?
Even then, look, if he committed treason, execute him. If he stole money, imprison him. But 34 years in a mask? That's not justice. That's not proportionate. That's cruelty for the sake of secrecy.
But what if the alternative was civil war? What if revealing who he was would have torn France apart?
Then you're asking if one person's suffering is worth national stability. And that's a dark calculation.
It's a necessary calculation if you're a king.
Is it? Or is it just how power justifies cruelty? This person must suffer for the greater good. How many times in history has that been the excuse?
So you're saying Louis was wrong no matter what?
I'm saying Louis had options. He could have exiled the prisoner, sent him to a monastery, imprisoned him on an island. There were ways to neutralize the threat without the mask, without the erasure. Louis chose the cruelest option because it was the most secure. And I think that says more about Louis than about the prisoner.
Okay, but you're judging him by modern standards. In the 1600s, this was just how power worked.
And that's exactly why we need to talk about it. because power always justifies itself. This is how things work. This is necessary. The times required it. And we should always be skeptical of those justifications.
Fair point.
Besides, even if the prisoner deserved punishment, we still don't know what he did. So how can we say he deserved it? Maybe he was guilty of something terrible. Maybe he was just inconvenient. We'll never know. And that's the problem with secret justice. No accountability, no way to verify if the punishment fits the crime.
The mask was the crime and the punishment.
The mask was the crime and the punishment. And 300 years later, we're still arguing about whether it was justified. Okay, so we've covered theories, we've covered evidence. Now let's talk about why this 300-year-old French mystery still matters today. Because I think it does.
I mean, it's interesting, but does it matter?
Yes, it matters because it's about power and secrecy and what governments do when they want to hide something from you.
Oh boy, here we go.
Here we go. Think about it. Louis XIV wanted a prisoner hidden, so he masked him, kept him alive but invisible, made it impossible for anyone to know who he was. And it worked because Louis had absolute power and nobody questioned him.
Because he was a king.
Because he was an absolute monarch. But here's my question. What's the modern equivalent? What's the mask today?
You're going to say classified programs and secret prisons.
I'm going to say classified programs and secret prisons. Because modern governments have similar power. Maybe not absolute, but close. They can classify information, detain people without trial, hold people in locations we're not allowed to know about. It's just a different kind of mask.
Okay, but those are terrorists and criminals, right?
Are they? How do we know? We don't see them, don't know their names, don't know what they did. We're told they're dangerous and we're supposed to trust that. But what if some of them aren't terrorists? What if some of them just know inconvenient things?
Now you sound like a conspiracy theorist.
Do I? We know governments have detained innocent people. We know about extraordinary rendition. We know about people held for years without charges. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is documented fact. The only question is, how common is it? And honestly, we can't even make a true crime podcast about it because it's all classified.
Did you just make a true crime podcast joke?
I did, because it's absurd. We have thousands of podcasts investigating crimes from decades ago, but current secret detentions can't touch them. National security, and maybe some of that is legitimate, but maybe some of it is modern masking.
Okay, but we have oversight, courts, due process. We're not an absolute monarchy.
We have those things for normal prisoners. But what about the secret ones? What about people in alleged black sites? What about detainees in classified programs? Where's the oversight there? And before you say there is oversight, how would we know? If it's classified, we can't check.
So you don't trust the government at all?
I trust governments that have to justify their actions publicly. I don't trust governments that say, trust us, we can't tell you why. Because that's what Louis said 300 years ago. And he was masking a prisoner for reasons we still don't understand.
Fair point.
And here's the thing. I'm not saying every classified program is abusive. I'm not saying every secret prisoner is innocent. I'm saying power always wants more secrecy. And secrecy always enables abuse. That's just how it works. The man in the iron mask is proof.
So what's the solution? Just declassify everything?
No, not everything. Some things genuinely need to be secret for legitimate security reasons, but the bar should be high, really high, and there should be meaningful oversight, not just trust us, but actual accountability. Judges who can review classified cases, lawyers who can represent detainees, even in secret proceedings, some mechanism to ensure power isn't being abused.
And if they won't allow that?
Then we should be very, very suspicious, because legitimate secrecy can coexist with accountability. It's difficult, but it's possible. The only reason to refuse all oversight is if you're hiding something you shouldn't be hiding.
So you're saying we should always question authority?
I'm saying we should always require justification for secrecy. National security isn't a magic phrase that ends all debate. Sometimes it's legitimate, sometimes it's cover for abuse. And we should always be asking which is which.
Okay, but practically, realistically, what could normal people do about this?
Vote for transparency, support freedom of information laws, pay attention when governments try to expand classification powers or secrecy authority, demand that your representatives actually oversee these programs instead of just rubber stamping them. Support organizations that fight for civil liberties and prisoner rights. It's not sexy. It's not going to trend on TikTok, but it matters.
Wait, did you just reference TikTok?
I did. because that's where people get their news now. And you know what doesn't trend on TikTok? Government accountability, oversight, due process. It's boring, but it's how you prevent masks.
And if most people don't care,
then we get more masks. Maybe not literal ones, but classification, redaction, people who disappear. And 300 years from now, someone will be doing a podcast about our era asking why we let it happen.
that's bleak.
It's realistic. But here's the good news. We're having this conversation. People do care. There are organizations fighting for transparency, journalists investigating, lawyers challenging secret detentions. It's not hopeless, but it requires constant vigilance.
Because power doesn't give up secrecy voluntarily.
Because power never gives up secrecy voluntarily. You have to fight for it. And the man in the iron mask is a reminder of why that fight matters.
Okay, but I want to push back on comparing modern democracies to Louis XIV. He was an absolute monarch. We have checks and balances. That's not a fair comparison.
You're right. We have better systems, separation of powers, free press, independent courts. Those are huge improvements. But those systems can be bypassed. Emergency powers, national security exceptions, executive authority. There are mechanisms to work around the normal safeguards.
In extreme circumstances.
Define extreme. Who decides what's extreme? Usually the people who want the power. That's the problem. Power gets to decide when power is justified.
So you trust nothing.
I trust systems that require justification and allow verification. I don't trust us as an argument, and I think that's a healthy position in a democracy. Skepticism of power isn't cynicism. It's responsibility.
Fair enough. But you have to admit we're in a much better place than 17th century France.
Absolutely, we're in a better place. Louis could imprison anyone and nobody could question him. We have legal systems, rights, protections. That's progress, but progress isn't permanent. It requires maintenance, vigilance. Otherwise, we slide backward.
And the man in the iron mask is the warning.
The man in the iron mask is the warning. This is what happens when power is unchecked, when secrecy becomes normal, when people just accept that some things can't be questioned. We get masks, maybe not velvet ones, but erasure, invisibility, people who exist but don't exist.
God, this episode is depressing.
It's history. History is often depressing, but it's also instructive. And if we learn from it, maybe we don't repeat it.
Maybe.
Maybe. That's the best we can hope for. Okay, let's bring this back to the human side, because ultimately this is a story about a person, a real person who suffered. And I think that gets lost sometimes in all the speculation about who he was.
What do you mean?
I mean, we get so focused on solving the mystery that we forget there was an actual human being wearing that mask for 34 years. That's longer than most careers, longer than some marriages, an entire lifetime spent not being able to show your face.
That's heartbreaking when you put it that way.
It is heartbreaking. So let's think about what that actually meant. After 34 years without seeing your own reflection, would you remember what you looked like? Would you remember your own features? Or would you start to forget? Would the mask become your face?
That's a disturbing thought.
It's a deeply disturbing thought, and it raises questions about identity. If nobody knows who you are, if you can't show your face, if you can't tell anyone your name, are you still that person? Or do you become someone else? Does the mask erase you even while you're still alive?
The mask becomes your identity.
The mask becomes your identity, and maybe that was the cruelest part of Louis' punishment, not just hiding the prisoner, but erasing him. Making him forget himself, making it so even he might not remember who he was.
Do you think he gave up?
Gave up on what?
On ever being known, on ever being recognised. After 10 years, 20 years, 30 years in that mask, do you think he just accepted he would die anonymous?
I don't know. I hope he held on to his identity. I hope he knew who he was, even if nobody else did. But maybe that's optimistic. Maybe after 3 decades you forget. Maybe you have to forget to survive.
What do you think he thought about?
That's such a good question. What do you think about when you're alone for 34 years? Do you replay memories? Do you imagine a different life? Do you go mad? Do you make peace? We'll never know. We don't have his thoughts. We don't have his words. Just silence and a mask.
And a fake name on a grave that doesn't exist anymore.
And a fake name on a grave that doesn't exist anymore. That's his legacy. Marchioli, whoever he was, whatever his real name was, it's gone. Louis won. The prisoner was erased.
Except we're still talking about him.
Except we're still talking about him. And that's the irony. Louis wanted him forgotten, wanted the secret buried. But the secrecy itself made the prisoner famous. The mask made him legendary. By trying so hard to erase him, Louis ensured he'd be remembered forever.
Just not by name.
Just not by name. He's the man in the iron mask. Not a person, a symbol, a mystery. And maybe that's its own kind of tragedy, that he's famous but we don't know who he actually was.
You know what gets me? He probably had a family. Parents, maybe siblings, maybe a wife and kids. And they never knew what happened to him.
That's a good point. If he was Mattioli, his family in Italy would have known he was kidnapped. But they probably never found out he died, never got to bury him, never got closure. Just decades of wondering.
And if he was Dauger or someone else, his family might not have even known he was imprisoned. He just disappeared one day.
And that's another layer of cruelty. Louis didn't just erase the prisoner. He erased him from his family, from everyone who knew him, made it like he never existed. And somewhere there were people who loved him who spent decades wondering what happened. Did he die? Is he alive? Where is he? And they never got answers.
That's horrible.
That's what absolute power does. It doesn't just hurt the target, it hurts everyone connected to them. And Louis didn't care. The secret was more important than all of it.
So what do we do? How do we remember him properly?
We remember that he was real, that he suffered, that he was a person before he was a mystery. We don't let Louis' erasure be complete. We keep asking questions. We keep demanding answers even though we'll probably never get them. We refuse to let the mask be the final word.
We remember the person, not just the mask.
We remember the person, not just the mask, and we remember what the mask represents. Power unchecked, secrecy unquestioned, cruelty justified by reasons we're not allowed to know, and we make sure that doesn't happen anymore, or at least we try. Okay, so the Man in the Iron Mask, France's greatest mystery, 34 years in a mask, died November 1917, buried under a fake name, and 300 years later, we still have no idea who he was.
Probably Eustache Dauger, probably Ercole Mattioli, probably someone whose name we've never even considered.
Probably, but here's what we do know. He existed, he suffered, and Louis XIV had the power to make him disappear. That's real, that happened. And it's a warning about what power can do when nobody's watching.
So we watch.
We ask questions. We demand transparency. We don't accept secrecy without justification. And we remember, even if we don't know his name, we remember that he existed, that he mattered, that his suffering wasn't meaningless.
The Man in the Iron Mask.
The Man in the Iron Mask.
This has been the Mike and Mark History Experience.
And before we go, remember what we said at the start? Tell someone about this show. Text a friend, share the episode, leave a review. Word of mouth is how we grow. If you found this interesting, help us reach more people.
Because mysteries matter. Because history matters. Because remembering matters.
And because asking questions about power matters. Because demanding accountability matters. Because refusing to let people be erased matters.
I'm Mike. Wait, no, I'm Mark.
That's Mark. I'm Mike.
Got confused there for a second.
Thanks for listening, everyone. And remember, question power, demand accountability, never accept secrecy without a damn good reason, because masks come in many forms, and the only defense against them is vigilance.
See you next time.
With hopefully something less soul-crushing.
But probably not.
Yeah, probably not.
That's our brand.
That's sadly our brand.